I was 30 minutes into the drive home from work when I decided to stop at the grocery store and pick up some stuff for dinner. It was a Thursday, middle of October, and my wife had been acting weird all week. Not bad weird, more like excited weird, like she was hiding something. She kept texting me little smiley faces and saying things like, "Don't make any plans for Saturday." I figured it was probably a surprise birthday thing. My 35th was coming up in 2 weeks, and she always went over the top. I wasn't going to ruin it by prying. That Thursday, I took her car instead of mine because mine was in the shop. She said she'd work from home and didn't need it. So I drove her sedan to the grocery store parked, and when I leaned over to grab my wallet from the passenger floor, my hand hit a thick manila envelope that had slid out from under the seat. It was unsealed. I pulled it out, and the first thing I saw was the word divorce in bold at the top of a document. My stomach dropped. I sat there in the parking lot, engine running, and I read the whole thing. It was a completed divorce petition. She had already signed it. Her name was at the bottom. The date was from 3 weeks ago. She had filed it with the county clerk. I was the respondent. There was a proposed parenting plan for our daughter Lily, who was 4 at the time. She was asking for full custody. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just sat there with the papers in my hands, and I realized that every smile she'd given me in the last 3 weeks had been a lie. The surprise birthday party she was planning, probably a cover. Probably to make me feel guilty when she dropped the bomb. I called my brother. He told me not to say anything yet, to gather more evidence to talk to a lawyer. So I did. I photocopied everything, put the envelope back under the seat, and went home. She was in the kitchen making lasagna. She smiled and asked if I got the groceries. I said yeah. She didn't notice anything was off. I spent the next 2 days playing along. Saturday came. She told me to be ready by 3. We drove to a rented event hall. There were balloons, a banner that said happy birthday, about 30 of our friends and family. She gave a toast about how much she loved me. I toasted right back, pretending I didn't know. At the end of the night, when everyone was gone, I asked her to sit down in the car. I pulled out the envelope. She went white. She started crying and said she was going to tell me that night. She said she'd been unhappy for a year. She said she fell out of love. She said she met someone at work. I didn't yell. I just asked her why she planned a surprise party if she was about to leave me. She said she wanted me to have one last good memory. I told her I didn't want a memory. I wanted the truth. That was 3 months ago. We're in the middle of the divorce now. I got joint custody. She's already living with her coworker. I still think about that night in the car, how I held it together until I got inside the house, and then I broke down in the bathroom. I thought I was overreacting, but the papers were real, and the party was just the setup. That story is from an old post I saw on Reddit. It stuck with me because it made me realize that sometimes the most painful moments come wrapped in the most loving gestures. But the story I want to tell you today is about my own life. It's about a birthday party too, but nothing like that. My name is Alex. I'm 27. And I've been married to my husband, Peter, for 3 years. We've been together for 6 total. We live in a small town in Ohio. We have a 7-year-old son, Jack, who we adopted after we got married. I love that kid like he's my own blood because he is in every way that counts. Peter is 37. He's bisexual. That never bothered me. What bothered me was his family. They're from a conservative part of the state, and they never really accepted our marriage. His mom especially always made comments about how Peter should have stayed with his ex-wife, Allison. Allison is Peter's age. They were married for 5 years, divorced about a year before I met Peter. No kids together. But his mom never let her go. She'd invite Allison to family dinners, to holidays, to anything she could. Peter always promised me it was nothing, that she was just a friend of the family, that his mom was just old-fashioned. I believed him. I had no reason not to. But 2 weeks ago, we drove to his hometown for Jack's 7th birthday. We were going to have a party at his mom's house. Jack was excited to see his cousins. I was nervous as always, but I plastered on a smile. I bought a big cake, wrapped presents, got Jack a new bike, the whole 9 yards. The party started at noon. About an hour in, I noticed Peter was missing. I looked around the living room, the backyard, the kitchen. Then I saw his mom whisper something to Allison's sister, who was standing by the door. That's when I knew. I walked inside the house and went upstairs. The bedroom door was half open. I saw them, Peter and Allison, both half undressed, standing by the bed. I stood there for maybe 5 seconds. They didn't see me. I didn't make a sound. I just turned around, walked back down the stairs, and went to the backyard where Jack was playing with a balloon. I sat down on the grass and watched him, and I didn't cry. I couldn't, not at his birthday. The party kept going. We cut the cake. Jack opened his presents. People were already starting to leave when Peter and Allison came back down, both looking flushed. Peter pulled me aside in the kitchen. He was angry. He said, "You shouldn't have cut the cake without me. That was disrespectful." I looked at him and said, "I'm sorry. I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went dead silent. I didn't wait for an answer. I took Jack, said goodbye to no one, and drove to the hotel we were staying at. I put Jack to bed, and then I sat in the bathroom and I shook, not from crying, from rage. That night, Peter came back to the hotel. I didn't let him in until he admitted what I saw. He said it was a mistake. He said Allison came onto him. He said he loved me. I didn't believe him. I asked him why his mom would set this up. He said she didn't, but I knew. I'd seen the whisper, I'd seen the setup. The next day I took Jack and drove home without him. I told him I needed time. He's been calling and texting ever since. His mom left voicemails saying I'm overreacting, that it was just a moment of weakness, that I should forgive him because we're married and that's what couples do. But I can't look at him without seeing them in that room. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not ready to decide yet. But I know that I'm not going to let Jack think that kind of behavior is okay. I'm going to protect him, even if it means breaking up our family. That's my story. It's still fresh. I'm still in the middle of it. But I wanted to tell it because maybe someone else has been through something similar. Maybe someone can tell me if I'm overreacting or if I'm finally seeing the truth. I thought I was done with surprises after that, but life has a way of feeding you one gut punch after another. My name is not important, but I'm 28, and up until a few months ago I thought I had everything figured out. I'd been with my fiancée, let's call her Mia, for 2.5 years. She's 32, smart, ambitious, and we clicked from the first date. We posted pictures together, tagged each other in reels from vacations, and made it clear we were a couple on Instagram. But she didn't have many real-life followers from her office or personal life on there, just 7 or 8 really close friends she met regularly plus one cousin. I never thought much of it. We got engaged 6 months ago. In our culture, we have separate wedding parties from the bride and groom sides. We booked halls, picked dates. February 2025 was the plan. Everything seemed smooth. I introduced her to my family at a nice restaurant downtown. They loved her. We started planning the guest list, the catering, the whole thing. But every time I brought up meeting her best friends, she shut it down. She'd say things like, it's bad luck to meet them before the wedding, or they're very shy, or we'll do a group dinner after we're married. At first I let it slide. I didn't want to be controlling, but after a while it started eating at me. I asked her once if she was hiding something. She laughed and said I was being paranoid. Then one night about 3 weeks ago, I was over at her apartment and she got a call from one of her friends. She stepped into the bathroom to take it. That was unusual. She never hid calls from me. I waited, and when she came out, I saw her eyes were red. I asked what was wrong. She said her friend was going through a breakup. I said I was sorry. She didn't offer more. The next week, I decided to ask more directly. I said, Mia, if we're getting married, I should at least know your best friends' names and faces. Can we set up a video call or something? She got defensive. She said I was pressuring her, that I didn't trust her. I told her I did trust her, but this was weird. She cried. She said her friends were judgmental and didn't approve of our relationship because of a cultural difference. Her family is Bengali, mine is not. I was shocked. She'd never mentioned that before. I asked if they were racist or something. She said no, but they were traditional. I believed her. But then my own best friend started digging after I vented to him. He found her friend's Instagram. It was locked. But he sent a follow request from a fake account. The friend accepted. What he found was not good. There were posts about staying loyal to your community and keeping our bloodlines pure. There were comments on her posts from people who seemed to be part of some extremist group. I confronted Mia. She broke down and admitted that 2 of her best friends were involved with a radical political organization that preached ethnic purity. She said she didn't agree with them, but she was scared to cut them off because they knew her from childhood. She said she didn't want me to meet them because she knew they would try to break us up. I was furious. Not at her for having toxic friends, but for hiding it, for making me feel like I was crazy. I asked her to go to counseling with me. She agreed, but she also said she wouldn't drop her friends. She said they were like sisters. I told her I couldn't marry someone who kept secrets that big. She said I was overreacting. We're not together anymore. I called off the wedding 2 weeks ago. She's been texting me nonstop saying she'll go no contact with them if I just give her another chance, but I can't because it's not just about the friends, it's about the lying. About the fact that she didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth until I found out myself. I still love her, but I don't know if I can ever trust her again. And then there's the whole work drama that made me realize some people are just impossible. I work at a mid-sized company in operations. I'm a senior manager. We have a CEO we call Dick because he is one. And his golden boy Bob. Bob and I used to be peers, but over the last 2 years he's been promoted past me. He became a family man, his wife a SAHM, and Dick ate that up. Meanwhile, I had a baby last year and Dick silently demoted me. No raise, no title change, just a gradual removal from important projects. Bob, on the other hand, showed up late, slept at his desk, took months off for a family emergency, and got promoted. He's now above me. Last week, Bob texted me out of the blue. Hey, my wife, toddler, and dog need to stay somewhere for a week in January. Can you host them at your place? If not, I'll ask the company to pay for a hotel. I stared at my phone, gobsmacked. I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. I got demoted for having a baby. And now he wants me to house his entire family for a week. I said no, politely. I said I didn't have space. He didn't respond. But the next day I got called into Dick's office. Dick said he heard I wasn't being a team player and that Bob's request was a chance to show flexibility. I asked if Bob would be paying for my time, my utilities, my groceries. Dick said that was bad attitude. I told him I'd look into it. I spent 2 days actually considering it, then I talked to HR. They said it was a personal request, not a work requirement, so they couldn't force me, but they also said they'd note that I was uncooperative, so I'm stuck. I'm looking for another job now, but in the meantime I'm holding my ground. I am not hosting Bob's family. I don't care if it costs me my job. I've got a kid and a dog and a mortgage. I didn't sign up to be a free airman for a man who got where he is by parking his wife at home and sleeping through meetings. Some stories have happy endings, some just have endings, but at least I know I didn't let myself be walked over, not by a fiancé who lied and not by a boss who thinks I'm his mother. I'm done being the person who cleans up other people's messes. I wish that was the end of it, but it got worse. The day after that meeting with Dick, Bob walked straight up to my desk. He didn't knock, didn't ask if I had a moment. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, and said, "Hey, so I heard you talk to HR. That's kind of a dick move, honestly. I was just asking a favor." I didn't say anything. I just stared at my screen, pretending to read an email I'd already read twice. He kept going. "My wife is really stressed out. The toddler is going through a sleep regression and the dog has separation anxiety. We thought staying with someone we know would be better than a hotel. I thought we were cool." I finally looked up. "Bob, we're not cool. We've never been cool. You got promoted 3 times in 2 years while I got demoted for having a baby. And now you want me to house your family for free?" He shrugged. "I said I'd ask the company to pay if it was a problem. A hotel is literally the same thing. Why not just book one?" He got quiet. Then he said, "Because my wife doesn't want to stay in a hotel alone with the baby. She wants to stay with someone she trusts." I almost laughed. "You trust me? You don't even know where I live." He didn't have an answer for that. He just turned around and walked away. I thought that was the end of it. But Dick called me into his office again the next day. This time the door was closed. Dick was sitting behind his desk, not even looking at me, just shuffling papers. He said, "I've been hearing some concerning things about your attitude lately. Bob is a valuable member of this team. He's a family man. He needs support. And you're making things difficult." I said, "I'm not making anything difficult. I said no to a personal request. That's my right." Dick finally looked up. "I don't think you understand the culture we're trying to build here. We help each other. We go the extra mile. You used to be like that." "What happened?" I wanted to scream. "What happened? I had a baby. That's what happened. I took 12 weeks of maternity leave and came back to find my projects reassigned, my budget cut, and my name left off the email chain for the quarterly review. I tried to talk to Dick about it then. He said I was being too emotional and that maybe it's the hormones. I let it go because I needed the job, but I wasn't going to let it go anymore. I said what happened is I had a child and you decided that made me less useful. Meanwhile, Bob had a child and you gave him a promotion. That's what happened." Dick's face went red. He said, "That's not. It is. It's exactly what happened. And now you want me to host his family? I'm not doing it. I'm not your mother, Dick. I'm not Bob's mother. I'm an employee who hasn't seen a raise in 4 years. He didn't fire me. Maybe he knew that would look bad. But he said, I'm going to note this in your file. I think you need to reconsider your priorities." I walked out. I didn't cry until I got to my car. And then I sat there for 10 minutes just gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. I thought about quitting right then. I have a mortgage, I have a kid, I have a dog that needs expensive medication, so I stayed, but I started applying that night. I sent out 8 resumes. I called a recruiter I used to work with. I told myself I would find a way out. A week later, Bob texted me again. "Hey, my wife found a hotel, no hard feelings, right?" I didn't reply. I blocked his number. Dick didn't mention it again, but he also stopped putting me in meetings. He stopped including me on department emails. He was freezing me out. I knew what that meant. They were building a case to fire me, so I doubled down on the job search. I went to interviews during my lunch break. I took calls in the stairwell. Then one Friday afternoon, Bob's wife showed up at the office. She had the toddler in a stroller and the dog on a leash. She walked right up to my desk and said, "Hi, I'm Bob's wife. I just wanted to say sorry in person. I didn't mean to cause any drama." I looked at her. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were puffy and the toddler was crying. The dog was trying to sniff my trash can, and for a second I felt bad for her. But then I remembered. She married a man who let his boss bully a coworker into hosting his family. She wasn't the victim here. She was just the one asking for the favor. I said, "It's fine. I hope you found a nice hotel." She smiled weakly and walked away. I never saw her again. I quit 3 weeks later. I found a job at a smaller company that actually values work-life balance. I got a 15% raise and a start date in March. When I gave my notice, Dick didn't even look up. He just said, "Okay, HR will send you the exit paperwork." Bob didn't say anything. He didn't even look at me. Sometimes I wonder if I should have fought harder, if I should have gone to the board, filed a complaint, made a stink. But honestly, I was tired. I was so tired of being the person who had to fight for basic respect. I just wanted to work, go home, and spend time with my kid. I didn't want to be anyone's mother except my own child's, so I left. And I don't regret it, not for a second. But that's not the last story I have. There's one more, and it's the one that really broke me. A few months after I left that job, I was at a friend's barbecue. I'd been single for a while, trying to figure out what I wanted. I met a guy there, let's call him Tom. He was funny, kind, and had this easy smile that made me forget about all the crap I'd been through. We started dating. It was slow at first: coffee dates, walks in the park, a movie night at his place. He was 35, divorced with a 7-year-old son. He talked about his ex-wife like she was a good person, just not the right person for him. I liked that. It showed maturity. After 6 months, we moved in together. I loved his son. The kid was smart, sweet, and he called me mom after a year. I didn't correct him. I wanted to be his mom. Tom and I got married in a small ceremony. It was perfect. Then about a year into the marriage, his ex-wife started showing up more. She'd call at odd hours, asking about pickups and drop-offs. She'd text him late at night, sending pictures of the kid from school events. I didn't think much of it at first. Co-parenting is hard. But then I noticed Tom getting distant. He'd take his phone to the bathroom. He'd stay late at work. One night, I checked his phone while he was asleep. I know it's wrong, but I had to know. And what I found was a string of texts to his ex-wife. I miss you. Never should have let you go. You're the only one who really gets me. I woke him up. I showed him the phone. He didn't deny it. He just said, it's complicated. I moved out the next week. I filed for divorce. He begged me to stay, said he would cut her off, go to therapy, do whatever it took, but I couldn't. I'd already been through that once. I wasn't going to be someone's second choice again. The divorce was finalized last month. I got custody of the dog. That's about all I got. But I'm okay. I'm rebuilding. I'm learning to trust myself again, because the one thing I've learned from all of this is that you have to trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And no matter how much someone promises to change, you can't make them. You can only decide what you're willing to accept. I'm done accepting less than I deserve. I thought I had a solid marriage. I was wrong. My name is not important. I'm 27 and my husband Peter is 37. We've been together for 6 years, married for 3. We have a 7-year-old son named Jack. He's adopted and I love him like he came from my own body. Peter is bisexual and I've never had an issue with that. I never had an issue with his ex-wife Allison either. She was a fact of his history, something that happened before me. But his family, they were a different story. Peter's family is homophobic, not in the loud, violent way, more like the quiet, passive-aggressive way. They'd say things like, you and Allison were so good together, or it's a shame you two didn't work out. They never said gay or straight. They just implied that my existence was a phase. That Peter would come to his senses and go back to a woman the way God intended. I put up with it because Peter swore he was done with that life. He swore I was his family now. 2 weeks ago, we went to his family's town for Jack's birthday. It was supposed to be a simple celebration. Cake, presents, a few cousins. I wanted Jack to feel loved by his grandparents even if they didn't love me. I thought I was doing the right thing, but my mother-in-law had other plans. She invited Allison to the party. I didn't know until I saw her walk through the door. She had that fake smile on her face, the one that says, I'm better than you and everyone knows it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Jack and leave. But it was his birthday. He was 7 years old. He was laughing with his cousins, holding a balloon shaped like a dinosaur. I wasn't going to ruin that for him, so I stayed quiet. I spent the whole party with Jack. We played tag, we ate chips. He showed me the toy car his uncle gave him. I didn't look at Peter. I didn't look at Allison. I kept my eyes on my son. Then it was time to cut the cake. I looked around for Peter, but he was gone. Allison was gone too. I felt a knot in my stomach, but I told myself I was overreacting. They were probably just talking, getting closure, whatever. I went inside to look for him. The house was old, creaky. I checked the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, nothing. Then I went upstairs. Peter's old bedroom was at the end of the hall. The door was slightly open. I pushed it open. They were taking their clothes off. Peter's shirt was already on the floor. Allison was unzipping her dress. They froze when they saw me. Their faces went pale. I stood there for a moment, maybe 10 seconds, maybe a lifetime. Then I turned around and walked back to the party. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just went back to my son and cut the cake. I smiled. I laughed. I watched him open his presents. People started to leave, and then Peter and Allison came back downstairs. Peter looked at me with this half-guilty, half-annoyed expression. He pulled me aside and said, why did you cut the cake without me? That was disrespectful. I stared at him. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, I'm sorry. I thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants. He went quiet. I picked up Jack and left. We went back to the hotel. I put Jack to bed and then I sat on the bathroom floor and let myself fall apart. Peter didn't come back that night. He showed up the next morning alone, apologizing. He said it was a mistake. He said Allison caught him off guard. He said he'd cut off his family, go to therapy, do whatever it took. I didn't believe him, but I didn't have the energy to fight, so I went home with him and tried to pretend everything was fine. It wasn't fine. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I looked at him, I saw that bedroom. I saw her hands on his chest. I saw the way he looked at her like I didn't exist. I started checking his phone. I know it's wrong, but I had to know. And what I found was worse than I imagined. He'd been texting Allison for months. I miss you. I've been thinking about you. Maybe we should talk. He told her he loved her. He told her he regretted the divorce. I confronted him. He cried. He begged. He said he'd stop. I wanted to believe him. But then I thought about Jack. I thought about what kind of example that would set. I didn't want him to grow up thinking love meant accepting betrayal. I filed for divorce last week. Peter is fighting it. He says he'll change. He says he'll do anything, but I'm done. I'm done being his second choice. I'm done being the one who has to forgive. The worst part is his family is on his side. They're telling everyone I'm the villain, that I'm too sensitive, that I'm trying to keep Jack from his real father. But Jack is my son. He's my son in every way that matters, and I will never let anyone treat him like a pawn. I don't know what comes next. I'm trying to find a lawyer. I'm trying to find a therapist. I'm trying to breathe, but I know one thing for sure. I was never the problem, and I'm not going to let anyone make me feel like I was. But that wasn't the only story I heard that week. There was another one from a guy I barely knew, but his situation stuck with me. He was 28, engaged to a woman named Priya, 32. They'd been together for 2.5 years, and on paper, everything looked fine. They posted pictures on Instagram, vacations, dinner dates, even a cute reel of them dancing in the kitchen. She had about 7 or 8 really close friends, plus a cousin she saw all the time. But here's the thing, he'd never met any of them, not once. He kept asking her like, hey, let's grab coffee with your friends, I want to know the people you love, and she'd brush it off. Oh, they're busy, or they're not really the group hangout type. He didn't push it, he figured some friendships are private, but then they decided to get married. He took her consent, introduced her to his family at a nice restaurant downtown. His parents loved her. They booked a wedding hall for late November last year. Standard in their city, you have to reserve months in advance. She seemed fine with it. She even went and booked a hall for her side of the party, which was normal in their culture. The bride's family hosts a separate reception. But when he asked her again, maybe 4 months before the wedding, can we at least have dinner with your best friends? I want them to know me before we're married. She got weird, not angry, just strange. She said, they're really private. They don't like meeting new people. Can we wait until after the wedding? He thought that was odd, but he agreed. Then his own friend, a guy from college, called him one night and said, dude, I ran into Priya at the mall yesterday. She was with a group of women. They looked really close. Are those her friends you've never met? He said, yeah, probably. And his friend said, she introduced me as a colleague from work. Why wouldn't she say you're her fiancé? That's when the doubt started. He checked her Instagram more carefully. Her posts were all couples stuff with him, but her tags were weird. She'd tag him but not use his name, just a generic heart emoji. And her friends never commented, not a single one. He asked her about it. She said, oh, they're not big on social media. He didn't buy it. He started digging, found out her cousin, the one she saw all the time, had a public profile. He messaged the cousin from a fake account, pretending to be an old school friend. The cousin replied, said Priya was a great person, but then mentioned something that made his blood run cold. She was engaged to a guy in her hometown about 3 years ago. It fell through. She doesn't talk about it. He confronted her. She broke down, said she was scared to lose him, said her family had been forcing her into an arranged marriage before she met him and she ran away. That she hadn't told her friends because she was ashamed. But he pressed more and eventually the truth came out. Her best friends, they weren't real. They were her cousins and a few colleagues she barely knew. The 7 or 8 close friends she met regularly, some were just siblings of her ex. She'd been lying about her entire social circle. He called off the wedding. His family was furious, lost the deposit on the hall, money spent on invites. But he couldn't marry someone who had built a whole fake network around herself. He said, I don't know if she was hiding something worse, but the fact that she couldn't even let me meet one real friend told me everything I needed to know. That story hit me hard. Because I knew what it was like to have someone you love turn out to be a stranger. A few months later, I stumbled into a workplace nightmare that made my heart race just reading it. This woman, let's call her Sarah, had been at her company for years. She was the kind of employee who kept the place running, never complained, always delivered. But she had a boss, a CEO she called Dick because he really was one. And there was this golden boy, Bob, who got promoted every time he sneezed. Bob had a kid, his wife became a SAHM, and Dick thought that was the most admirable thing ever. Meanwhile, Sarah had a baby and got silently demoted. No change in her work, no warning, just a title downgrade and no raise for 4 years. Then Bob got promoted to Dick's level above Sarah. And a week later, Bob texted her, hey, can you house my wife, toddler, and dog for a week in January? If not, I'll ask the company to pay for a hotel. No hello, no please. Just an assumption that she'd drop everything for him. Sarah was gobsmacked. She ranted online and everyone told her to go to HR. She actually did. She had a meeting with Dick who basically said, Bob is a family man, you should be supportive. It's not a big deal, she said. I haven't had a raise in 4 years. I was demoted after my baby. Bob gets praised for being a father while I get punished. Dick just shrugged. You're being too emotional. Maybe you need to take a leave. She didn't take leave. She updated her resume and started applying. But here's the update that came a few weeks later. Bob's wife and toddler never showed up because Bob had been lying. His wife had left him 2 months earlier and his golden boy status was built on a fabrication. He'd been using Sarah as a backup plan in case his ex changed her mind. When Dick found out he didn't fire Bob, he gave Bob a performance improvement plan. And Sarah, she got an apology but no raise. She quit last week. She's starting a new job in 2 days. I read that and thought some people just never learn. But Sarah did. She walked away. And that's the only thing you can do sometimes. Walk away and don't look back. But let me tell you more about what happened after I filed. Peter didn't just fight the divorce, he started showing up at my apartment. At first it was texts, please let's just talk, I'll do counseling. I'll do anything. Then it was calls from blocked numbers, then he'd park outside my building and wait. I called the cops once, they told him to leave but there's no restraining order without proof of threats. He wasn't threatening me, he was just there. One night I came home from picking Jack up from daycare and Peter was sitting on the steps. He looked wrecked, unshaven, red eyes. I need to tell you the truth, he said. I almost slammed the door in his face but Jack saw him and yelled, Daddy. And I couldn't do that to Jack, so I let him in. He sat on my couch and told me everything. Allison had started contacting him right after we got engaged. She'd been jealous, she wanted him back, and his family, especially his mother, had been pushing them together all along. He said they used Jack as an excuse. Jack needs a mom and a dad, they'd say. Allison is his real mother. But Allison had never been a mother to Jack. She'd left when Jack was a baby. I was the one who'd been there for every fever, every nightmare, every first day of school. Peter said he told Allison to stop, but she'd kept sending messages. Then at Jack's birthday party, his mother had deliberately invited her. He said he went to the bedroom to tell Allison to leave, but she started crying and then she kissed him and he kissed her back. It was only that once, he said, I swear. I didn't scream, I felt cold. I said, you expect me to believe you stopped after that? You were texting her for months. I miss you. I love you. I saw the messages. He went pale. You saw those? Those were from before we got married. I never meant them. You sent them when we were engaged, Peter. That's still cheating. Emotional cheating counts. He broke down crying again. Jack came over and hugged him, and I realized then that I couldn't have this conversation in front of our son. I told Peter to leave. I said he could see Jack on weekends supervised by my sister. He agreed because he had no choice. The next day I got a call from Allison. She was drunk or high. I could hear it in her voice. She said, you think you're so special? He never loved you. He only married you because I wouldn't take him back. You're just a placeholder. I hung up, but it stuck in my head. I started digging into her past. Found out she had a history of stalking Peter after the divorce. She'd shown up at his job, his gym. She'd even once broken into his apartment. He never told me any of that. I confronted him again. He admitted it. I was scared of her. I didn't want you to think I was still involved. I said, but you were involved. You let her into our marriage bed. You let your family manipulate you, and now you're here begging, but you never chose me. You never chose Jack. He had no answer. I hired a lawyer who specialized in custody cases. We're going for full custody. My lawyer said the stalking history, the infidelity, the homophobic family, all of it works in my favor. Peter's lawyer is trying to say I'm alienating Jack from his biological father's family. But Jack calls me dad. He doesn't even remember a time before me. The judge appointed a guardian ad litem. The first report said Jack is well-adjusted and loves both of us, but that Peter's family has made homophobic comments in front of him. That was a huge red flag. We're in mediation now. I want supervised visits for Peter. I want no contact with Allison. I want Jack to stay with me. Peter is fighting it, but I'm not backing down. I can't. Jack is my son. Now that story about Priya, the one who had fake friends, I got an update on that too. The guy who told me the story, his name is Ravi. He reached out to me after I posted about Peter and Allison. He said Priya had been engaged twice before him. Both times she'd hidden the fiancé from her friends. Both times it fell apart when the truth came out. The cousin he messaged, she later called him and apologized. She said Priya had been lying to everyone for years about her job, her education, even her age. She was actually 36, not 32. The whole thing was a house of cards. Ravi said he felt relief. He dodged a bullet, but he also felt guilty for not trusting his gut sooner. He said 2.5 years. I wasted 2.5 years on someone who couldn't be real with me, and now I'm starting over at 30. I told him I understood. And Sarah, the one from the office nightmare, she messaged me too. She started her new job and said it's a breath of fresh air. Her boss is a woman who actually values work-life balance, but she's still angry about what happened. She said the company HR never truly investigated Bob's lies. They just wanted it to go away. And Dick, the CEO, gave Bob a slap on the wrist and then promoted him again 6 months later. Bob is now a VP. Sarah said, I should have sued, but I didn't have the energy. I just wanted out. I get that. Sometimes you just want out. I'm still in the middle of my own fight. The divorce isn't final yet. Peter has been going to therapy, or so he says. He sends me letters, handwritten, old-fashioned, apologizing, promising change. I read them and then I shred them, because I've heard it all before. His mother called me last week and screamed at me for stealing her grandchild. I hung up, I blocked her number. I don't have room for that kind of poison. Jack is doing okay. He asks when Daddy is coming home. I tell him Daddy has his own home now, but we still love him. And we'll always be a family, just in a different way. He's 7, he doesn't fully understand. But I'll make sure he grows up knowing that love isn't supposed to hurt, that trust isn't supposed to be broken, and that no matter what, I'll always be there for him. I've started seeing a therapist too. She told me I'm grieving the loss of a future I thought I had. She's right. I thought I'd grow old with Peter. I thought we'd raise Jack together, maybe adopt another kid. Now I'm a single dad with a custody battle and a bruised heart, but I'm also free. Free from the lies, the doubt, the constant wondering, so here I am still in the middle of it, still not sure where I'll land, but I know one thing, I was never the problem, and I'm not going to let anyone make me feel like I was. But that's just one story. Let me tell you about another one I came across. This one hit different because it wasn't about cheating or workplace betrayal, it was about secrets. The kind of secrets that make you question everything you thought you knew about someone you were about to marry. I first heard about this guy, let's call him Arjun. He was 28, living in a big city and engaged to a woman named Myra who was 32. They'd been together for 2.5 years, and from the outside, everything looked perfect. They posted pictures on Instagram from vacations, date nights, little moments. Everyone thought they were the couple. But there was one thing that bugged Arjun from the start. Myra had these friends, like 8 really close friends she'd known for years. She met them regularly, like every other weekend, sometimes for dinner or coffee, but she never introduced Arjun to them, not once. When he asked, she'd say things like, oh, they're shy, or they're not ready to meet you yet, or let's wait until after the wedding. At first, he thought it was weird but not a red flag. She was private, he told himself. She had her own world. Then came the family meeting. Arjun wanted to introduce Myra to his parents. She agreed and they met at a nice restaurant in the city. His parents loved her. She was polite, charming, funny. They started talking about weddings. His mom said, let's set a date. Myra hesitated, but eventually they agreed on February 2025, about 6 months away. Arjun was thrilled. He booked a marriage hall right away, and Myra booked one on her side too, which is normal in their culture, separate parties for the bride and groom's families. But then something shifted. Arjun started pushing to meet her friends. He said, we're getting married in a few months. I should at least know your best friends. They're going to be at the wedding. Myra got defensive. Why is that so important? They're my friends, not yours. He said, it's not about owning them, it's about being part of your life. I've introduced you to my friends and my family. Why can't you do the same? She said she would, but then every time he brought it up, she had an excuse. One friend was out of town, another was busy with work. Another was going through a breakup and didn't want to meet new people. After a month of this, Arjun started to feel sick. He thought maybe I'm overreacting, maybe she's just private. But then he remembered something. She had a cousin she was really close to, a girl named Priya. Myra talked about Priya all the time, so Arjun asked, can I at least meet Priya? She's family. Myra said, Priya lives in another city. She can't travel right now. That's when he decided to do something he'd never done before. He found Priya on Instagram and sent her a message. He said, hi, I'm Arjun, Myra's fiancé. I'd love to talk to you about the wedding. She's mentioned you a lot. He waited, no response for 2 days, then 3. Then he saw that Priya had read the message but didn't reply. The silence made his stomach drop. He confronted Myra. I messaged Priya, she ignored me. What's going on? Myra's face went pale. She said, you had no right to do that. You're invading my privacy. He said, we're getting married. That's not privacy, that's secrets. She started crying, saying he didn't trust her, that she felt suffocated. He backed off, but the doubt didn't go away. Then one night he was scrolling through her Facebook photos, looking at old posts before they met. On a picture from 3 years ago, her and Priya at a beach. In the comments, someone tagged a guy named Rohan and said, miss you too. Arjun clicked on Rohan's profile. Rohan was in a relationship with a woman named Myra, the same Myra, and the timeline, they were together 2.5 years ago, right before Arjun started dating her. So Myra had been engaged to someone else and she'd never mentioned it. Arjun called her. His voice was shaking. He said, who is Rohan? She went silent. Then she said, he's an ex. It was a long time ago. He said, you were engaged to him, Myra. I saw the posts. She started crying again, saying it ended badly, that she didn't want to talk about it. He asked if there were others. She hesitated. No, she said, but he didn't believe her. He started digging deeper. He found out that Myra had been engaged twice. Both times she'd hidden the fiancé from her friends. Both times the relationships fell apart when the truth came out. And her age, she told him she was 32, but he found documents showing she was actually 36. Arjun felt like the ground had opened up. 2.5 years. He'd given her his heart, his family, his future, and she'd been hiding a whole other life. He broke off the engagement. She begged, said she'd changed, said she was scared of being judged, but he couldn't trust her, not after all the lies. He told me later that the hardest part wasn't the breakup. It was realizing that he'd ignored his gut for so long. He thought the secrecy was just her being private, but it was a wall. And behind that wall was a person who couldn't be honest, not even with the man she was about to marry. Sometimes we want so badly for the story to be true that we ignore the chapters that don't fit. But those chapters always come out eventually. Then there's the workplace story that makes my blood boil just thinking about it. It's not about cheating or secret lives, it's about how the people who are supposed to lead you can treat you like a doormat and call it teamwork. I'll call her Sarah, that's not her real name, but it fits. Sarah worked at a medium-sized company for about 8 years. She was a senior manager, good at her job, respected. Then she had a baby, and everything changed. She came back from maternity leave to find that her role had been quietly restructured. Her team was reassigned, her projects handed off. No official demotion, just a slow drain. Her new title was technically the same, but her responsibilities were cut in half. She was basically a backup, a glorified assistant to a guy named Bob. Bob was the golden boy. He started at the company around the same time as Sarah, but he was lower on the ladder. Then his wife had a baby and became a stay-at-home mom. The CEO, let's call him Dick because that's exactly what he was, loved it. He'd pat Bob on the back and say, now that's a real family man. Bob started showing up late, leaving early, sometimes not showing up at all. He'd sleep at his desk, but Dick just promoted him and promoted him again. Within a year, Bob was at Sarah's level, then above her, and now Bob was a VP. Sarah, meanwhile, was stuck, no raise in 4 years, no advancement. Whenever she asked about it, Dick would say something like, you're doing great, but you seem distracted, maybe focus on your home life. She was a mother now, so obviously she couldn't handle real work. Then one Tuesday afternoon, her phone buzzed. It's a text from Bob. Hey, I need a favor. My wife, toddler, and dog need a place to stay for a week in January. Can you host them? If not, I can ask the company to pay for accommodations. Sarah stared at the screen. She thought about the 4 years of stagnation, the silent demotion, the way Bob got praised for being a dad while she got punished for being a mom. And now he wanted her to house his family, her house, for a full week. She typed back, "I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. I have my own family and my own schedule. I can't host anyone for a week." Bob replied immediately, "Okay, I'll talk to Dick about getting a hotel covered." She thought that was the end of it. But 20 minutes later, she got a calendar invite meeting with Dick at 3 p.m. She walked into his office at 3. He was leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head. He didn't even ask her to sit. He just said, "Bob tells me you can't help him out. That's disappointing." She said, "I have a toddler of my own, Dick. My house isn't set up for another family." He waved a hand. "It's 1 week. You've got the space. Be a team player." "I don't have the space. I live in a 2-bedroom. My daughter has her own room. Where am I supposed to put his wife and kid and a dog? Couch, air mattress, figure it out." She stood there, her heart pounding. She thought about how many times she'd covered for Bob when he was late, how many times she'd stayed late to fix his mistakes, how she'd never asked for anything in return, and now she was being called selfish for not turning her home into a free hotel. She said, "No, I can't do it." Dick's face went hard. "Fine, I'll book a hotel. But this doesn't look good. Bob is a senior leader now. He's your superior. You don't want to burn bridges." She didn't answer. She walked out. The next few weeks were hell. Dick started finding reasons to call her into meetings and criticize her work. He questioned her hours. He sent passive-aggressive emails CCing HR. Sarah started documenting everything, dates, times, quotes. She knew she was being pushed out. She went to HR. The HR lady, a thin woman named Karen, listened politely. Then she said, "So you refused a request from a VP, and you're surprised there are consequences?" Sarah said, "The request was for me to host his family for free." Karen shrugged. "It might have been a test of your flexibility. I'd suggest apologizing and seeing if you can repair the relationship." Sarah realized HR wasn't there to protect her. It was there to protect the company from her. She started looking for a new job. It took 3 months. During that time, Bob's wife ended up staying at a luxury hotel paid for by the company. Bob posted on Facebook about their amazing company-funded vacation. Meanwhile, Sarah's performance reviews got worse. She watched as Dick promoted another young dad who'd barely been there a year. Her last day was a Friday. She cleared out her desk, said goodbye to a few people who whispered, "I'm so sorry," and walked out into the parking lot. She called her husband and said, "I did it, I'm out." He said, "Good, now you can find a place that actually values you." She did. Within 2 months, she had a new job with a 20% raise, a real title, and a boss who said, "If you ever need to leave early for your kid, go, we trust you." She cried in the car after that meeting. Looking back, Sarah told me she should have sued. She should have taken the documentation to a lawyer. But she was exhausted. She just wanted out. And honestly, I get that. Sometimes you're so beaten down that fighting feels like one more burden. But here's the thing I've learned from all these stories, the ones about cheating spouses, secret pasts, and bosses who think you're their servant. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You get to say no, you get to walk away. And when you do, the world doesn't end. It just opens up. I'm still in the middle of my divorce. Peter's lawyer is dragging things out. His mother still calls to scream at me. Jack asks when Daddy's coming back. I don't have all the answers, but I know I'm not the problem. I never was. And I'm going to keep telling these stories, not because I want revenge, but because I want anyone out there who's stuck in a situation that feels impossible to know you're not alone, and you don't have to stay. I sat in my car for a while after that phone call with Sarah, just staring at the dashboard. Her story hit close to home, not the specifics. I wasn't being asked to house my boss's family. But the feeling of being used, of being taken for granted, of having your value measured by how much you're willing to sacrifice. That was my life with Peter. I thought about the last few months of our marriage. The signs I ignored, the excuses I made. It started with small things. He'd come home late, smell like perfume. I'd ask who he was with and he'd say, "Just work stuff, babe, you know how it is." I knew how it was. I'd been in the corporate world long enough to understand late meetings. But this was different. He'd shower immediately, change his clothes, avoid my eyes, then the phone. He used to leave it on the counter face up. Suddenly it was always face down, password changed. He said it was for security at work. I believed him because I wanted to. The real crack came 6 months before Jack's birthday party. We were at his parents' house for Thanksgiving. His mother made a comment about how real families have both a mother and a father. She looked at me when she said it. Peter didn't say anything. He just smiled and passed the cranberry sauce. I asked him about it later. He said, "She's old school, you know, she doesn't mean anything by it." I said she means everything by it. He got defensive, said I was overreacting, that his family was just traditional. Traditional, that's a nice word for homophobic. I let it go. I always let it go because I loved him. Because I thought if I was patient enough, understanding enough, he'd see how much I cared and he'd choose me over them. But that's not how it works. You can't love someone into choosing you. They either do or they don't. The night before the party, I found the divorce papers. Not the finalized ones, the draft. He'd left them in the glove compartment of her car. She was parked in our driveway, picking up Jack for a playdate. I needed to grab something from the passenger seat, and there they were. A manila folder stuffed with legal documents. Dissolution of marriage in bold letters on the first page. I didn't read the whole thing, I didn't need to, I saw my name, his name, the date from 2 weeks earlier, I put it back. I closed the glove compartment, I walked inside and made coffee like nothing had happened. That was the worst part, how calm I was, how practiced. I'd been preparing for this moment for months without realizing it. The party was at his parents' house. I drove separately so I could leave early if Jack got tired. I brought the cake, I brought the presents, I smiled at his relatives who barely looked at me. I played with Jack and his cousins, I was the good spouse, the perfect partner, and then I found them in his old bedroom, the room where he'd slept as a teenager with his ex-wife. The woman his parents still called his real wife. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I walked back to the party and helped Jack cut the cake. I remember his little face covered in frosting, laughing. That's what I held on to. When Peter came downstairs and cornered me about cutting the cake without him, I felt something snap. Not loud, quiet, like a thread breaking. I took Jack and left. I packed our bags at the hotel. I called my brother and told him everything. He said, "Come home, we'll figure it out." The next morning I filed for divorce. Peter called me 17 times. I answered on the 8th. He said, "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I said, "It meant enough for you to hide it. It meant enough for you to lie." He said, "Can we talk about this in person?" I said, "No." I hung up. I looked at Jack.